Is it possible to stick to the Wahls Protocol while eating at your favorite restaurants? Or any restaurant for that matter? Today, we're diving into the do's and don'ts of dining out while on the Wahls Protocol. As a nutrition coach specializing in multiple sclerosis and a Wahls Warrior myself, I'm helping you to break down your options on the menu, know any questions to ask your server, and even learn some tips of making any meal fit your dietary needs. So whether you are a seasoned Wahls Warrior or just curious about how to eat healthier in a restaurant, this episode has you covered. So let's get started. There are 1 million people diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in the US. So that makes you 1 in a million. And you have a special purpose in this world that no diagnosis can take away from you. So if you are ready to reclaim your body, mind, and life from multiple sclerosis, welcome to my MS podcast. I'm your host, Alene Brennan. Hello and welcome to today's episode. If you listen to season 1 of this podcast, then you know when I was diagnosed with MS, I was 36 and single. In other words, I was in a season of my life when I was going to restaurants a lot, whether it was on a date or for a girls' night out. And I wasn't always with my immediate family who knew about my diagnosis and the reason behind this new way of eating. I still wanted to go out with my friends or on a date. However, the ability to order a Wahls-friendly meal off a menu seemed so far out of my league. I really didn't feel comfortable going out. And we all know it's easy to get in your head in moments like these. You're following this super strict diet in hopes that it can reduce your symptoms, or better yet, slow down the progression of this disease. But honestly, it feels like you have to live in a bubble and eat kale and broccoli all day to make it happen. I mean, is it just me who felt this way? Am I the only one? I mean, tell me if I missed the mark here. But I've talked to so many of you. I'm pretty confident in saying that how I felt was more of the norm than the outlier. Now, for some of you, this may be bringing back memories of your early days on the protocol. For others, you may be in the thick of it right now. But in either case, I want to share some tips with you to make it a little bit easier to go out to a restaurant so that you can enjoy that experience and enjoy the time with the person that you're with. Now, my guess is that if you're listening to this podcast and heard any of the previous episodes, you're somewhat familiar with the Wahls Protocol. But because I know we have new listeners each and every week, let's just do a quick recap for any of our listeners who are not familiar with it. I think it's most easily compared to the Mediterranean diet or the paleo diet, if you're familiar with either of them. But the Wahls Protocol is basically like a step up from the Mediterranean diet and a little bit more organized than the paleo diet. So again, it's similar to the Mediterranean diet in that it emphasizes lots of veggies and fruits, primarily to focus on reducing inflammation and just supporting overall health. And it includes healthy fats. The Mediterranean diet is well known for its use of olive oil as the primary source of fat, but it also includes nuts and seeds, whereas the Wahls Protocol encourages more use of like coconut oil and animal-based omega-3 fatty acids, like the ones that you find in fish, but nonetheless, like the making sure that you're getting healthy fats because they really support brain health and reducing inflammation. And then the other way that the Mediterranean and the Wahls diet are similar in that they both limit processed foods and sugars. We know that those aren't good for us, so they really emphasize both of them. Now, on the paleo side of it, the Wahls Protocol is similar to the paleo diet because it focuses on, again, those whole foods like the veggies, the fruits, the meat, the fish, the nuts, the seeds. And both of those diets focus on eliminating gluten, dairy, sugar, as well as like those seed oils like vegetable oil, corn oil, and soybean oil. But I say that the Wahls Protocol is more organized than the paleo diet because with the paleo diet, it's just like, here's your list of eat this and don't eat that. But with the Wahls Protocol, it's more organized in that it's saying like, hey, Yes, you want to get more vegetables in, but I want you eating 6 to 9 cups a day. Ideally 3 cups of leafy green, 3 sulfur rich, and 3 deeply colored. So it's very intentional with getting those specific categories of vegetables. It's not just kind of like a free-for-all in the whole veggie category. And then of course the Wahls Protocol also does emphasize some quote unquote superfoods. Dr. Wahls really encourages things like organ meat and fermented vegetables. So again, it's similar in the foundational principles of the Mediterranean and the paleo diet. It's just a little bit more organized and structured to really be intentional with what you're eating, because it's doing so from a therapeutic perspective. It's really designed to help heal the gut, reduce inflammation in the body, and ideally regulate the immune system, ultimately helping us to reduce symptoms and again, ideally slow down the progression of this disease. Now that's a big promise. I mean, if you can feel better in your body on a day-to-day basis and have more confidence in your future, that's 100% worth it. I'll order a salad over fries all day, every day. Of course, I say this now as I'm sitting at my desk having just had lunch and not surrounded by the smells of the amazing foods at restaurants, and especially the meals that my family and friends are ordering right in front of me. That's when things get real. That's when things get real. When you are in the restaurant and you have all the smells and all of the food that's passing by you and even right in front of you. And that is exactly why I am such a firm believer that the very best thing that you can do for setting yourself up for success at a restaurant is to review the menu in advance. Do not show up at a restaurant having never looked at the menu prior. It's too stressful sitting at the table trying to decide what you're eating before the server comes on any given day, but it is a whole nother level of stress when you're trying to find a Wahls-friendly meal in that short period of time. So before you step foot in a restaurant, look up the menu online, even if it's on your phone in the parking lot of the restaurant. There's just less stress and more opportunity for you to scan through the menu and start identifying something that would be most likely something that you would like and compliant with the Wahls Protocol. Now, the ideal scenario is to call the restaurant in advance, especially during off hours. Do not call during a meal service hour, but if you can call during off hours and ask to speak to a chef or a manager, that's going to be the ideal scenario. And when you talk to a chef or a manager, you're letting them know that, hey, I'm coming into this restaurant and I have a couple food allergies. I reviewed the menu and I just wanted to confirm if the meal that I had in mind could be made allergy friendly. This is so much easier for them to accommodate you. The last thing that you want to do is to call and just rattle off a list of foods that you can't have and put the pressure on them to create the meal for you. Yes, they're a restaurant, but they are not familiar with the Wahls Protocol. They may not be familiar with any of like the healthier food options. They're just focusing on getting the meals out from the kitchen onto the table. That's why it's important for you to be able to suggest them. But if you can prompt them with 1 or 2 specific meals and the list of allergies, that's so much of an easier ask of them. So I might say, I'm coming into the restaurant on Saturday. I have a couple food allergies, but I looked at the menu online and I identified 2 meals that I was interested in getting. And I just wanted to confirm if they could be made allergy friendly. So my allergies are gluten, dairy, soy, nut, and egg. So when I looked online, I saw that you have insert meal here, your chicken dish, your gluten-free pasta dish, your salmon dish, the bunless burger, whatever it is that you spotted that seems to be the most closely related to the Wahls Protocol or most closely following the Wahls Protocol. And then I identified these items or these meals. Can you just confirm that they don't have any of those allergens in them? And I might even follow up and say, again, the allergies are gluten, dairy, soy, nuts, and eggs. Those are my personal allergens that I don't eat. Some of them are because of the Wahls Protocol. Other of them are because of migraines. And then others are just allergies. So your list is going to be personal to you, but that's kind of giving you the structure of how to have that conversation with the chef or manager on the phone prior to you being there. So then they might go check some things in the kitchen just to confirm. But ideally, they're coming back and they're saying, yep, absolutely, we can do that. Or we can do this, but we would just have to tweak it a little bit. So, that just starts the dialogue. And then once you go into the restaurant, then you're able to speak with the server and say, hey, I called and I spoke with Pat on Wednesday, and I mentioned that I was coming in. We discussed the menu, and here's what we discussed about me getting. If you can just note for the chef that my allergens are, I repeat them slowly, here's what I would like to get. And then again, the allergens are. So I kind of like bookend it just to make sure that they're writing it down. You do get the occasional person who doesn't write it down. And I guess you just kind of have to respect that that's part of their process, which is really frustrating. But in either way, you've done your part. You've emphasized that you've spoken with somebody ahead of time. And that in and of itself raises the level of importance that you're not just coming in and saying like, hey, I can't have these foods because you're on like some random diet or detox or whatever it is. It's taken more serious. The more seriously you take it, the more seriously they will take it. So if you're taking steps like calling in advance, reviewing the menu ahead of time, reiterating that I spoke with this person on this day, here's the menu item that we discussed. Can you make sure that these allergens are conveyed back to the kitchen? Those are all different like safeguards for you to make sure that they are doing their best to deliver the meal that is going to be best for you. So then the natural kind of next question is, what do you look for when you are reviewing a menu? Now, the obvious choice are salads. I mean, that's your safest bet. You just want to make sure that you're eliminating any like cheese, croutons, or pasta, things like that from it. But a salad is a pretty safe bet. If I'm in a restaurant that I don't have a lot of confidence in their ability to manage the allergies, I will just ask for a garden salad with baked chicken or grilled shrimp or whatever protein that I can get on top of it. And then I'll ask for a side of olive oil as the dressing. And it's not going to be fancy. It's certainly not going to be decadent. It might not even be flavorful, but it gets some veggies in me and I don't have to worry about them messing up my order. Of course, we don't always want a salad every time we go out though. So sometimes we want something more substantial or we just want a hot dish. And I don't really crave salads in the middle of winter. So, there's different times that you're going to want something other than a salad. And that's totally understandable. You shouldn't be eating salads all day, every day. You do want to have a variety of foods and cooked versus raw foods and just all the different things and some different flavors. So when I'm looking at a menu, I start by identifying the protein. What chicken or salmon dish do they have on the menu that I would like? Then I'll check out their side dishes. And I will often just kind of create my own meal. So just because something isn't specifically listed as a meal on the menu, it doesn't mean that they can't make it for you. So I may say something like, I see that you have salmon. Could you grill that with a side of asparagus and a sweet potato? Or honestly, most times I just do double veggies. I'll get like sauteed spinach and asparagus, for example. So that's kind of like a basic framework that you can think about when you're looking at a menu. Start with the protein because that's going to be like the base of your meal. Identify a protein that you would like, whether it's chicken, fish, the beef. There's so many different examples of protein or meat or fish, again, that you can look at. And then how can you build it with some sides around it? And you may be looking at some of the existing meals there for ideas, or you just look at the side dishes that they have. You can even look at appetizers. Like they may have shrimp cocktail as an appetizer, but it's not listed in any entrees. So maybe they have gluten-free pasta and they have shrimp cocktail as an appetizer. Can you get them to grill the shrimp and add that in with some gluten-free pasta if you eat that? Again, just really find some ways to get creative. Now, some of the things that you do want to watch out for that are the more like hidden ingredients or allergens, like gluten and dairy can be in a lot of dishes that we don't even know about. Now, many restaurants are offering gluten-free menus, which are super helpful, but either way, always specify with the server that you are gluten and dairy free or that you have a gluten and dairy allergy, because gluten and dairy can be in dressings, in marinades, in soups. Like it's tucked into so many different things. They may even like sprinkle some cheese in a marinara sauce that you're like, it's just a tomato-based sauce. There would be nothing else in there. Maybe, but maybe there is some, maybe they put some like breadcrumbs in something, or maybe they sprinkle cheese, or again, like there's so many different things that we're not aware of. So always bring it to the server's attention. And if you're new at this and you kind of feel like, oh, I don't know how to mention this to the server, because what if I tell them that I'm gluten and dairy free, or I have a gluten and dairy allergy, and then I accidentally order something that has it in there? I'm going to look foolish. So the way to avoid that is talk with your server ahead of time and just say like, hey, I just want to let you know that I have an allergy to gluten and dairy. This whole world is honestly a little new to me. So if you can just kind of like help me through this process, I would greatly appreciate it. That's a very disarming way to approach it. And it takes the pressure off you. Like you've now built a relationship with the server. And just a side note, I always ask or kind of like position myself to have the server like come next to me. So I'm not having this conversation across the table, especially if it's with people, a bigger group, or people that I don't know. Not that I shouldn't say that I don't know, but like if it's just a bigger group, I don't always want my food or my food choices a bigger discussion. So I'll sometimes ask the server if they can come around, and people do that because they can't hear. So like, it's not a weird ask to say like, hey, could you just come over here? I have a couple questions for you. And then that's when you can say, hey, I just wanted to let you know, again, I have a gluten and dairy allergy. I'm a little bit new to this. So if you can just kind of help guide me through this process, I'd really appreciate it. Start a conversation. That is what it's about. Now, when you're placing the order, they may say something like they can't guarantee cross-contamination, which is basically means that they are preparing other foods in the kitchen that have gluten and dairy. So they can't guarantee that like your chicken's not going to be on the same cutting board where cheese was, or your, I don't know, whatever, if you order anything that's in the fryer, it may be in the same fryer that breaded chicken tenders are cooked in, or breaded wings are. There's a possibility of cross-contamination. Now, it's kind of like, I would say, a personal decision as far as how much you want to have a firm stance on this. Each person is going to have a little bit of a different sensitivity, and you really have to determine what is right for you and the approach that you want to take. If you're on the fence about it, the safest bet is always to avoid it, especially if you're in a season where like you feel like you're really sensitive to a lot of different triggers, or there's just a lot of triggers that are in your life right now. Maybe it's a high stress time, or maybe it's the middle of summer and you're affected by heat, or the complete opposite. It's the middle of winter and you're affected by the cold. If you know that you're in a time when you're more vulnerable to triggers, or just have more triggers around you, that's not really the ideal time to experiment with something like that. But if you're in a time where you've been feeling really well for a while and you feel like you're comfortable with trying it out, then you try it out and you pay attention to the results. There's going to be some risk, but each person, that level of risk is going to be different for each person. For some, it's like so minuscule. For others, they are more sensitive to it. So if you're going to try it out, just pay attention to the results. And then the other thing that you want to be mindful of in terms of like kind of like hidden ingredients or allergens or unsuspecting things in the kitchen are the oils that they cook with. Now, again, not everyone's going to have a sensitivity to this, but if you feel like you're doing all the right things with like what you're ordering, but you're still feeling like crap afterwards, you might be affected by oils, because restaurants are notorious for having poor quality oils. Those seed oils are incredibly inflammatory. And when I say seed oils, I'm referring to like corn oil, vegetable oil, soybean oil, like all of those oils. They're inflammatory and disruptive to the gut. So you may be better off avoiding them. So basically avoiding anything that's fried is going to be important for you. But you can even ask, so like if they had fries that you're really interested in having or really craving, you can ask if they can bake them. Some restaurants will do them, not all, but some will. It can never hurt to ask. always ask what the options are. So if there's anything that you wanted that would traditionally be fried, ask if they can bake it. Or sometimes restaurants do have like gluten-free fryers, so there's no cross-contamination, but the oil is still going to be the same. And the servers aren't always as familiar with oils because that's not like a super common thing that people typically ask for, but it can be really valuable to ask. But the most important thing here is just have a conversation with your server. Look at the menu ahead of time, call the restaurant to speak with a manager or chef in advance, and then talk with your server once you get there, because they may have more options than are on the menu, or they may have some suggestions. I will tell you more time than not, when I create kind of like my own meal, a lot of times the servers are like, I never thought to get that, but that looks delicious. I'm actually going to order that on my break. So we can actually order some pretty good food here. Now, what happens if you have a meal on the menu that's your absolute favorite and it doesn't look Wahls compliant? There's a couple of things that you can do. One, you can, again, ask them to see if they can make any modifications. If you're talking about something like chicken parm, that's going to be pretty stinking hard because it's breaded, it's fried, it has an egg wash to it if you're avoiding eggs, it has the cheese on top of it. Like, there are certain things that just really can't be recreated without those key ingredients. So maybe you go home and see if there's a version that you can make at home. That's what I've done with a lot of the things. Like, I know that there are certain meals that I just can't recreate in a restaurant. So I've started to explore like how I can do a copycat recipe at home that's allergy friendly. So that might be one option. The other thing, again, talking to the servers to see, are there any swaps that they can make? So sometimes it's as simple as having a gluten-free pasta instead of a wheat-based pasta. Or sometimes you may have something that if you just removed the cheese from it, or just they did a grilled chicken instead of a breaded chicken cutlet. Again, just have the conversation, see if they can get creative with it. In some cases, you may create a whole new meal that's just as good. Or you might come home and really get excited about some copycat recipes that you're making. But above all, pay attention to the results, because I will tell you, there are a lot of times that I walk away from meals where I'm like, there's so many other things I would have loved to have had off this menu other than what I had. However, I wouldn't trade any of it for how I feel right now, because what you're eating at a restaurant, yes, it's pleasurable. Yes, there's a social and a communal, and like there's a whole experience to it that is wonderful, but nothing tastes as good as being healthy feels. Nothing tastes as good as being healthy feels. So remember that you are doing this not to punish yourself, not to deprive yourself, not to separate yourself from all the, social things here. You're doing this because you are healing your body. You're doing this because you want to fuel your body with the best foods to have the best outcome with your health right now. You want to do this to help reduce inflammation in your body and boost your energy and just get more out of life. Get more out of life, because at the end of the day, this podcast and this journey is all about reclaiming your body, mind, and life from multiple sclerosis. And I sure hope that some of the tips that we had on today's episode empower you to do that while you're still enjoying time out at the restaurants. So I'm curious to know, what do you order when you're out at a restaurant? Have you found some creative things? Are there things that you're listening to this podcast and you're like, Alene, this was fantastic. However, you totally left this one really important thing out. Share it, because those are the things that I so appreciate. And the more that you share, the more I'm able to provide different ideas, suggestions, answer your questions, and all of the things on future episodes. So as always, take one thing that you learned from today's episode, whether it is calling the restaurant in advance, talking with your server, asking for a gluten-free menu, seeing if you can create your own meal based on what you see on the menu there, or paying attention to the results. Regardless of what you choose to order and eat, Pay attention to the results because, my friend, that is what is so motivating for your next decision. If you ate something and felt like crap afterwards, you're going to remember that next time you're placing an order. It's going to be far more motivating to order something different. Whereas if you ordered something and felt great afterwards, well, then that's fantastic. That's super motivating to say, I am 100% ordering that next time. And that also arms you with a restaurant that you know has some meals that support you in following the Wahls Protocol. So next time you're trying to find a restaurant that you can meet up with some friends, you can toss that out as a suggestion. The more that you can get involved in that planning process of being the one to toss out the ideas, the better positioned you are, because you already know ahead of time, oh, I do better at, say, Mexican restaurants because I know that I can do some corn tortilla tacos, and I can ask for some cucumbers with my guacamole appetizer. Or I do really well with Chinese because I can just do steamed chicken and broccoli and some white rice if you eat it. Or sushi. I do phenomenal at sushi restaurants. I just BYO my own coconut aminos instead of soy sauce. So again, it just positions you well to be able to toss out different ideas or restaurants or cuisines that you know that you can do better with. So please drop me a note either via email or a DM over on Instagram. I love hearing from you. How are you doing with navigating the restaurants? And I sure hope, again, that you've taken at least one thing away that you will start putting into action now. Well, my friend, we've reached the end of this episode. Pick one lesson from today's discussion and put it into action now. It's time to reclaim your body, mind, and life from multiple sclerosis. And for more resources, events, and programs, head over to alenebrennan.com. See you on the next episode of my MS podcast.